Good evening, everyone. Are you able to hear me in the back? Is this working? Can you hear me back there? Wait. Okay, we're going to try and get the volume turned up a little bit so you don't have to hear me shout. I'm David Marin. Welcome. We're going to have a little bit more introductions, but before we do that, to help set the stage tonight, we're going to start off with a little introductory video. So we'll go ahead and begin with that. When the board asked, are we on? Okay. When the board asked if I would come and volunteer to be the facilitator tonight, I said, of course, because this means so much to me. I grew up here in Oxnard. Many times I've been here for performances. I think I did a graduation in junior high school even. But more importantly, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to hear from you, to find out what you think are the next steps for this beautiful facility. What can we do? What do you need? What are your thoughts? So let me tell you a little bit about the process, but first I want to acknowledge we have two of our board members over here. If two could please stand, Gary and Vincent. And behind me is the director of the Performing Arts Center, Carolyn Mullen. So what we want to do tonight, you have your agendas, but what we're hoping to get from you is your feedback. So we're going to have some presentation. Gary's going to walk us through a lot of the process, what's the next steps. I know many of us are concerned about what's going to happen with the PACC. We're also going to then break out into individual sessions. Those tables in the back, still can't, not hearing me. Hold on. Okay, is that a little better back there? Okay, I'll start at the very beginning. No, I'm kidding, I won't do that. But the goal tonight, and by the way, this is our two board members, Carolyn Mullen, our executive director here of the PACC. The goal tonight is to get your feedback, to hear your thoughts, what you envision for this beautiful facility. After we hear from Gary, who's going to give us a little explanation of some of the process, we're going to take questions at a high level, but more importantly, we're going to break out into these sessions at the back tables. Each table will have a scribe and a facilitator to hear from you as far as what you think we should do. That'll be a real excellent opportunity to give us your input. And we'll still take some questions up here, and I'll explain that a little bit later. So, to get us started as far as the whole process, I'd like to introduce Gary Bloom, the board president for the Performing Arts Center.
Thank you, David. First of all, I want to thank everyone that's here tonight. We didn't know how many would show up, but we wanted to have the opportunity for the community to be involved in this process. It's happened very quickly. I think for the community, for our board, for especially our staff, some of the decisions that he's been making. First and foremost, I want to recognize some remaining board members that are still here tonight. We're doing a variety of things. Emmanuel Herrera, thank you, Emmanuel, for showing up, also for being our photographer. In the back, Irma Lopez is here tonight, and I have to thank Irma because she was the one who asked me to be on this board like years ago, decades ago. Also, Michael Doty is on here, very involved in community education. Duranda Martin is here. And and Vince, of course, is here. And we have a few other board members that couldn't make it or might be here later. We also have a task force that we have formed of people in the community who want to be plugged in to the process that we're going through. So it's reaching beyond just the board members, but people in the community. And I think we can still take people on that task force and some of the subcommittees, but we have a very tight timeline. So you have to realize if you want to be part of the process beyond today and make a commitment, it is almost like meeting weekly. So you can talk to Carolyn during the meeting, after the meeting, more about that. So what we wanted to go through briefly was a presentation that was given by the city management to the City Community Council on what is the process for the RFP. The RFP just was released 36 hours ago, 48 hours ago. So we just got to see it for the first time, but this was sort of the process that was given by the fourth floor to those three council members in that committee to go through the process. So there's some history in it, some focusing of where things should be going, and anyone who's going to be proposing this. And I want to clarify something. There's a lot of like save the PACC, save the PACC. Everyone's understand what is save the PACC. I don't think the PACC has been as threatened as what happened with the Carnegie. We were very fortunate that when the city was initially looking at its financial woes and how to deal with that, when it initially looked at that, they probably didn't fully realize how many events were on the books or in negotiation, or even the number of employees that would be affected under the nonprofit corporation that operates the PACC, the operating company for the city. So when we hear save the PACC, it doesn't mean it's going to be boarded up. So do not take it as that threat. What we really feel like save the PACC means is save the PACC that it's run by the community, run by our citizens, because if the brief little history you saw up there, it was built by the citizens of Oxnard. And there's an incredible amount of citizenry in operating this facility through the years. There probably should have been more, definitely, in the past 10, 20 years. But things changed through the years. The city took on a bigger role in subsidizing the facility. And that's where we sort of come to today in the past few months of that realization that the city doesn't quite have the ability to do that. And how can we move forward with putting out these requests for proposals to operators that would mainly be operating the auditorium, but potentially needing to see the entire site as a campus. I just want to say too that give some credit to the fourth floor, specifically Ashley Golden and her office, assistant city manager. They did extensive research on other like-kind facilities throughout Southern California, and they actually found it very difficult to find a facility exactly like this, where you have a 1,600-seat auditorium, a ballroom, meeting rooms, outdoor courtyards. There are a lot of auditoriums with some meeting space, but nothing quite exactly like ours. So it's a very different animal. And so that process of going through this RFP is going to be interesting to see the results. But we want to get your input in this process and make that available to the city. It'll also be available probably to the people that will be looking at potentially operating the auditorium. The PACC itself, I call it the PACC with a big C, the corporation, the nonprofit, we actually are envisioning putting a proposal in as well, either by ourselves or with some of the other event promoters that are interested in looking at the facility. So there's a lot of things on the table, but what you say tonight is really, really critical for us. Hopefully will make our proposal all the more important and valued in getting your input. So I just want to make sure you understood the meaning, the reason we're here tonight, and how important it is your input tonight. So a couple of things here. This is just sort of a rundown of the facility that was letting city staff know and where sort of the playing field of what's here. You can go to the next slide. Okay. I'm gonna let Vince say something because I don't remember everything, and Vince is the chair of our task force. So Vince.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I guess I want to change kind of the mindset when we talk about the PACC. What we really should be thinking about this is Oxnard's community center. And you are the community. And so if you take it and put that in your mind, yes, we do concerts and have big performances across the way in the auditorium, but we have these ballrooms. We have all those classrooms around here. And there have been many 501c3s and other organizations that have used these classrooms over the years, since '68, for their programs. And so this is a place where you can come to. I like to think that the rates here are always better than any place else, as opposed to going to a hotel and renting out a room there and that. But these were organizations, grassroots organizations that may not have a lot of funds, can come and have their programs. We can have graduations here. And so this is a community center. And so I just want to emphasize that, is let's, change our mindset a little bit. So when we're trying to keep this hang, we're trying to keep our community center Oxnard and not just make it a big concert hall.
Yes. Thank you, Vince, for clarifying that. So these are some of the goals that the city has set within the RFP. They want to develop and implement initiatives that penetrate new markets, attract new events, and promote the PACC. Properly maintain the facilities. The city is still owned by the city of Oxnard. It will continue to still be owned by the city of Oxnard. They want the professional, the best management they can get. The main three items that they've really focused on the RFP is the management and operations, financials, and marketing and advertising. Those are the three components that are really key to the city when the proposals come in from the potential operators. And also it means to manage and operate the auditorium, concession, and meeting spaces, though the city staff has said that they envision that the nonprofit operating company could be part of that, but it's rather fuzzy in the RFP. So the good thing is that Carolyn has been talking to many of the potential bidders, so they're getting a better feeling of what we could do or are capable of, and what happens here at the facility. It is a 3-year contract with two additional 3-year terms, so the city is looking that this is going to be a big investment for whatever operator may come in, that they just can't be here for 1 year. This is a big thing to get up and running and run differently for them. Develop a staffing plan, develop a transition plan. All these details are in there. You want to go to the next one, Carolyn? Operating procedures, provide a variety of entertainment genres, develop appropriate community event programming, and allocate a certain percentage for local community. They realize, all our partners that do use the facility, that they want to continue for them to be here. And then you can read a variety of things that are in there in a lot more detail. The actual RFP, can you go to the next slide? Okay. Creating marketing materials. The elements have to be description of the venue, scope of services, and then a council committee will be reviewing this later on. There is a whole timeline of the process. The actual RFP is a little hard to get because it's through the city's bidding process. You actually have to log in and get an account, but we have a copy of this, and I think, Carolyn, we're going to put it on our website next week sometime. So we want you to be able to see this if you want to follow along in what the requirements are, and if you have further opinions down the road, we'd like to convey that to the city and the committee that will be reviewing the process. A lot of people have asked in the community, can the PACC board or management be part of the process? And actually, we cannot if we are a bidder. So we can't be on that review body if we're putting in a proposal. So that's a little bit of a challenge for us. Was there anything else, Carol?
No, that's it.
Okay, all right. So that is, in a nutshell, describes a little bit about what's going on. And I think at this time, David, do you want to go into the Q&A?
Isn't it great to attend a meeting where everything's running ahead of time? So we're doing great tonight. We have a microphone right there. If anybody would like to come up and ask a question, maybe you want to know what type of events have been here in the past, if you have a general question about square footage of all the meeting room space, that type of thing. Once we get through any of those questions, then we can go into the breakout sessions. So I don't see too much of a line, but I see one woman coming up. We have another woman, so please come on up. We're looking really for those kind of questions to help us set the table for the breakout sessions. Please.
I have a lot to say, but I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to ask a question now because I've given a lot of my comments to Carolyn in written form. But I do have a question about the extent of the deferred maintenance and whether or not that, because I couldn't read the RFP from where I was sitting, So I will go on the website and read it, but is there anything about the responsibility of the operator to take on some of this deferred maintenance and on a schedule or some manner of speaking to be able to bring the place up to the modern codes?
That is a very good question, and it's probably the number one thing that people in the community think about. It's the number one thing we see on social media, and our board discusses it at length. So first of all, you need to know that the facility is well run for the budget that it has. So cosmetically, there are certainly things. The floor here in the Oxnard room, we're all embarrassed about it.
I'm talking about the big things.
Okay, so when you say big things, the city manager has a concern that we should probably look at the facility for an earthquake retrofit. The city's applied for a grant.
I'm talking about the fact that it's not ADA compliant,
Right.
that there's no handrail,
Right.
that people over a certain age cannot use the balcony,
So-
and you can't put in a handrail because you have to make.
Right. So I'll bring that up. So she's bringing up the ADA issue. So the board has actually dealt with this for a couple of years, and with the city attorney's office on what we can physically do here. And there were concerns in the auditorium with handrails and things that should be added. The thing is that when we start that, we have to do all of it. And so that is going to be part of the process. The city's going to go through in doing some research and looking for some grants that hopefully can address those issues. They do need to be addressed, but we're trying to operate and be safe and then deal with those issues as soon as we have the funding available. We certainly know about that. We have long lists of things.
Know about that, and I just wonder if there isn't some kind of ability to get a partial waiver with temporary kinds of rope handrails, and that's not the only thing. The place looks like it was built back in the 1960s.
Yeah.
You know, that's
We-
also, when I talk
we're-
about deferred maintenance, every single facility that operates for the public at some time or other has to modernize
Right.
and bring.
We're very aware of it. We're very aware of it.
So that's also an issue. I really asked you if that was part of the RFP.
No, from what I've seen, I don't think the ADA issue has been put in the
Not
RFP.
just the ADA, but the whole look and code compliance and modernization. Because if an operator's gonna take over the place and they don't have a plan for bringing the place into the modern world, then I don't really see how they can succeed.
All very valid concerns that we have had for years. We have even more now. The city management team has those concerns. And you're very accurate in saying that this is going to be part of what any operator comes in here and what they're going to have to deal with. Vince, you have a comment? Yes.
Yes, I just want to make everybody aware that this is still the city of Oxnard's facility. So the operator is coming in to operate it, but the city, because it is their facility and they are have the liability for it, they are well aware of all of the things that need to be improved, and there are other ones that you didn't list. And so they are working on a plan, because as we know, the budget has some issues. So they're aware of that, and so they are working on a plan to make changes to the facility, to upgrade the facility, but it's going to take a little bit of time because it takes a little bit of money to make that happen. But yes, they are aware of it, and yes, they are seeking grants and looking at other ways from both the state and federal levels to bring funds in to make the changes that need to be changed. So those are not being overlooked by no means. It's just that we need to get it done, and the how right now is a little hard.
Next question?
Two questions for someone who's brand new to this. The first is, it's not being, am I correct?
You have a little closer to the mic.
Am I correct, it's not being closed because it's a health and safety issue, it's being closed because it's a monetary issue?
Well, first of all, we're not wanting to close it. So there's just a transition in the management. That is the plan.
And the second thing is, was there ever consideration by the city that all of the campus be folded and operated under Parks and Recreation, and that just the theater is separate?
There have been numerous ideas through the years. For those of you a few years back, you might remember that our Mayor Tim Flynn wanted to build a high school here. and demolish several of the buildings, but keep the auditorium. There were extensive public meetings here on that process with the school district. That idea went nowhere. There have been proposals to tear down the entire facility and put housing here. Back when the collection was being developed, they were talking about building a smaller auditorium at the collection. So there have been numerous ideas through the years. If Recreation were to take over some of this, it's still the city of Oxnard, so they still have the same issues.
Are you married to the idea that this entire campus and the theater are one project?
Currently, the RFP from the city looks at that, but you never know. There may be a proposal from an operator that will look at it in a different light.
Can I jump in just real quick? I mean, one thing that didn't get addressed here, and what was so important about the scope that was just presented to the Community Services Committee for City Council, can you hear me? Okay. Is that in that meeting, they recognized the value of the nonprofit and our relationship with the community, that we're a community asset, we're here for the community, we present community programming. And that's why tonight's meeting is so important. This is your opportunity to tell us what you want from us and the new operator in terms of community programming. So we do want to focus on that, and I think that was a huge coup for us. I mean, it says that we're not going away, that we have a place here, and it's really actually quite vital. I think that was that. So the new operator, whether it's us or someone else, will have to work with our nonprofit, and we are very malleable. And this is nothing secret. We talk about it in every board meeting, that we are open to working with others, and so we have been reaching out to operators, and I think a lot of the concert promoters want the theater, and I think they're excited about this ballroom, but are they excited about our little meeting spaces? We don't know yet, so we're working all of that out, and I think that was a really great question. What can that partnership look like in terms of a concert promoter and our nonprofit? So it's being explored.
Let me just address something from a financial standpoint that came up earlier. Make money in the auditorium. The ballrooms make money. The classrooms, because they're for nonprofits, we don't try to make, big heaps of money for those. But those are all necessary. We have schools come over here, and that's where the school children learn the arts. And so there are a lot of programs in here that are not money-making programs. So by keeping the whole thing as one big piece, you're allowing that some profit from over there, some profit from over here, also helps to fund the pieces that don't make the money. And there's a lot of pieces in there. There's a lot of clubs that come here. There's a lot of other activities that are done here. Nonprofits, organizations that are not big money-making organizations that have a place to go, that have something to be engaged in. We have programs for youth here. And so, like the other programs in the city, the youth can come here and be engaged in programs as opposed to be engaged in other activities. So when we think of the PACC is probably more dynamic than probably most of us, including myself when I came on the board, realized all the activities that go on here. And that whole scheme of, well, you can let that go and demolish all of this. Well, this over here has meant something to a lot of people going back to 1968. So there are parents that have children that were here, that did activities here and had education and learning things and so forth. So you have to, think bigger than, maybe some of us are thinking, and it was myself too. Let's just get rid of this, get the money makers, and we'll run concerts through there, and it'll be a fabulous thing. But there's a lot more to here, and it has a lot more on the impact on the community. That's why I say it's a community center, and that's how we should think of it.
Please go ahead.
I've been involved with the Aviation Museum at Camarillo Airport since we formed it in 1981. We're a totally nonprofit 501c3. We have no employees. It's all done by volunteers, tearing old airplanes apart or getting parts of them and putting them back together and making them flyable and flying them to air shows all summer, like 15 air show weekends every summer and so forth. And the pilots that are professional pilots, they don't get paid either. Nobody gets paid, okay? We rent out our hangars for memorials, weddings, quinceañeras, everything you can possibly imagine, and we charge for it. And we expect to have we expect to have something besides our cost. We expect to have some profit in everything we do. Our members, we charge $200 a year for membership that goes to our headquarters back in Texas, because this is a 80-some unit organization scattered all over the United States in 4 foreign countries. And we charge our own members, local, $50 a year on top of that. So it's $250 a year per member. And you can't do much of anything without being a member, because the membership money then part of it goes to insurance, so that if something happens and you get injured, you're covered. Okay, so that's number one. And we've been doing this successfully for a very long time. And how I relate this is, I want this to be booming. I want it to be so successful that there's no worry about it being, teetering on. So I think, frankly, even though this is property that's owned by the city, I think you are entitled to have a little bit of profit off of everything that you do, regardless of how great it is and how wonderful it is. You deserve that. Besides your expenses of maintenance and electricity and all that.
That makes perfect sense.
And I really would like to see volunteers. Says, don't yell at me, I'm a volunteer. We had them made up by Aswell Trophy here on the boulevard, and everybody thinks it's funny, but we laugh at our own thing, but we're all doing it all the time, and we don't think a second thought of it. And many of us are there 3 or 4 days a week doing this volunteer. And I just want you to know that I haven't asked anybody, but I think there are a lot of people who would love to come and volunteer at no cost.
And I want to get some other questions.
So I want you to think about that in relationship to how this thing can continue to function.
Thank you, Pat. I'm going to let Carolyn speak to that a little bit.
Well, every event that we do here, we do 1,500 events a year. They all are revenue generating, even if it's just a smidge in the classrooms. And about volunteer programs, that's actually something that we started about a month ago. So if you go to our website, you can sign up. We have a volunteer form on there. We need things from gardening help to event help to even guerrilla street marketing. If you want to go put up some flyers, marketing is definitely one of the things that we could use some visibility on. So I appreciate everything that you're saying. And I would love for everyone on our task force to just raise your hand. So we do have a lot of volunteers, and they're here every single week fighting to make this work. So I thank you all for serving your time, and thank you, Pat, for your comments. They're great.
And I want to point out too, please go ahead, go to the microphone, I'll be brief. But there's a questionnaire that you've been handed out, and on that questionnaire there's a place for you to give us your name, your email, and indicate what you're willing to do. Are you willing to volunteer? What are your thoughts? So that's part of tonight's process as well. So please fill out those questionnaires before you leave. Yes? We will collect them at the doors as you leave.
There's been a lot of talk about the PACC not being architecturally significant. There's been a lot of talk about the PACC not being architecturally significant. It's old, it's dated. Well, so is my house. It's on the National Historic Register of Places. So, people thought Victorians were ugly. We need to preserve some of this mid-century architecture for our kids. My daughter's 20 years old, and she thinks it's the coolest thing since sliced bread. And we need to remember that, and we need to put that in the RFQ. Yes, we need to modernize it. We need to make sure that it has all these new fundamental things as far as Wi-Fi is concerned, and projection screens, that everything can be done wirelessly now. Just wires are better, but we could do that. We also need to make it handicap accessible. That is a huge priority, but we need to do that with a historical sensitivity. And we need to not think about how we're going to carpet it, how we're going to paint it, how we're going to take out that beautiful art, I forget what they're called, but the thing between the bathroom and the lobby. These These are things you don't find everywhere. You go downtown LA and they are itching and trying to preserve this. And they're revamping things like crazy. It's an art district. This should be an art center. We've lost our only art museum in the city. The PACC should be picking up the slack. We should have gallery spaces in those rooms. There's so much potential, and I'm going to wrap it up. But I would like to see on the RFP that if somebody's going to do something and they're going to change the way this place is laid out, that they have to go through some type of process so that we don't lose what's cool about the PACC.
Thank you. And yes, how about that? So when you're in these breakout sessions, don't handcuff yourself to think, well, this is not in the RFP or not. You have beautiful suggestions from everyone who's spoken. Put those down. Who knows what's going to happen after this RFP? Maybe the city decides to do a second RFP. Your input will be invaluable in that. So please, take all of your comments, suggestions, make sure you give it to the tables. Sir?
I'd just like to know what kind of notice was put out for this meeting today, because I just found out about it in this morning's newspaper.
Sure. So we did use social media pretty heavily. We ran paid ads for that, and we did send out a press release to the news. So thank you, BC Star, for covering that. We really appreciate it. And we have a person on our staff who's in charge of marketing. So she was tasked with a huge laundry list of everything she needed to do to get this word out. We had volunteers, including Anthony. He's around here. He was posting flyers around town. I think we had asked INCO to spread the word, and we reached out to everyone who utilizes the PACC. So if you were a nonprofit and have an event here, I know we have some individuals, right? Gem and Mineral showed up. We sent it to everyone who gets a rental credit or just rents from us. So definitely people who use the PACC were invited to come.
You know, I was last on the nextdoor.com website, and or .org or whatever, and that was 2 days ago, and I did not see any notice of this meeting.
It was on it.
It wasn't on our store.
It had a picture of the poster. It was on next door.
Over at the harbor.
Okay, just one comment. This open house is a great idea, and I think you should have more of them.
Thank you. Any last questions before we start? Going once, here we go. Yes.
Comment on that. Our organization found it difficult to do something during the fair. We're heavily involved in the fair. And also, I agree, there wasn't a lot of notice if you were not on a social media. My thing is, I'm the president of the Oxnard Gem and Mineral Society. We were original sponsor of the PACC. As part of the agreement to get this built, we agreed to hold our meetings and events here. We are naturally concerned about what's going to happen after December 31st. If the auditorium alone is done something or everything else, if all that other stuff is closing, we are very aware that we are not alone in using the meeting rooms and these rooms over here for our meetings and for our events. And we would like to know what's going to happen. Also, one of the things people have been talking about for years is the back parking lot, because our members and our vendors do not want to actually come back because of that. It's really hard on them, and we want to stay here because it's the center of the Oxnard. We've been here forever. We like to support the community, but I would like to tell people, what is your plan after December 31st? Should we be finding another venue for our show and our meetings? Do you have any idea of the person who's going to do the auditorium would want to close the rest of it? Does anyone have any idea what they're looking at doing?
So if you do look at the RFP, and I will say it is 29 pages long, they do say that the city and the PACC Corporation had to sign an agreement about our operations through the end of the year, and that did require that we issue cancellation notices for events in 2020. So that went out to New West Symphony and different organizations. Quinceañeras, I had to cancel a handful of those. So that's hard. That was very hard for us to do. It's not something we wanted to do. I know the board was very vocal about this with City Council, and we're still very vocal about it. We're not giving up on that point. And I mean, so much so that it did get into the RFP. They say that the current operators had bookings into 2020, and although cancellation letters did go out, they're asking the operators to consider honoring those dates and those requests. So we're doing everything we can, and we're apologetic, and we will do whatever we can to smooth things over.
Would anyone talking to the city council, like we had everyone going to the city council and doing mass showing up at their budget meetings, were the public doing something similar, work or show any movement on that response?
I think there will be official city council meetings dealing with the RFP. The little presentation you saw here was just for one of the council subcommittees, so there was very little attendance at that. Obviously, there was a lot of attendance on the pre-budget issues that many of you were at. But there will be plenty of notice when the RFP is going to be reviewed and a decision will be made, and that will be the opportunity for everyone in the community to speak up again.
Thank you. I think we have one more question behind you. Two. And then we need to wrap up, so.
I'm very unclear about the position of the staff, the position of the board, with regard to the rest of this place being, as it is in other cities, and I could name them, throughout the San Fernando Valley and in all five counties of Southern California, a parks and recreation facility that is separate, because it makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference, because Parks and Rec do the galleries and the educational programming and the rentals and the facilities like they do everywhere. So is it this RFP, request for bid, this is done, meaning the city will not consider taking this over, not the theater, but all of the grounds? Will the city not consider putting this in Parks and Rec? And what's your position on this?
Well,
Thank
technically, yeah, that's a really good question. Technically, this was under Parks and Rec. We don't have Parks and Rec in the city. The city underwent some restructuring, so the department is called Cultural and Community Services. So that encompasses the library, it encompasses recreation, it encompassed the Carnegie, and us. And the head of that was Ingrid Hardy. She left to go to Thousand Oaks, and now at the helm is Terrell Harrison. So that never happened, right? I don't know if those conversations were had behind closed doors about rec maintaining this. Clearly that's not the case, right? The city can't afford to keep the operations going here. This is why they're opening up this RFP process, RFP. Right, 6:30, I don't know, it's a long day. That's the long and short of it. And so the district concept, I can't speak to that.
Just to clarify, so you may be talking when you have a Parks and Rec district, a different funding mechanism that's separate from the city?
Either way.
Yeah,
Either
so
Parks
that's
and
how
Recreation
Thousand
or
Oaks,
district. Yeah,
right,
I've
that's
seen
how
it both
Thousand
ways.
Oaks and Simi Valley works. And there's actually a person on our task force who has brought that up as a potential funding mechanism in Oxnard, so there's more stability for the Parks District and any programs that run in recreation. Currently though, the way the LAFCO, I forgot what that stands for, but they don't allow new assessment districts or things to form. They usually try to consolidate them more. So politically, it would take several years to do that, to form a separate parks and recreation district with a different funding mechanism. But that actually was discussed on the task force as an option. Unfortunately, the city's not looking at that as an option right now. And within the RFP, it's not detailed. The city's looked as the owner and looking for the operator to operate the site.
Short-sighted.
Thank you. And we have this one woman who's been waiting patiently.
Last from 1968.
That's right. So, can you hear me?
Yes, right in.
So I'm glad to be last. And I have two words, history and community. So, I really want to thank Angela for making the point that mid-century architecture is important and classic, and it is part of this facility. And it breaks my heart for Cleo and all of the people who worked so hard to bring this about in the first place, to think that it would be brought into the 21st century by bypassing what is classic about it. So it was state-of-the-art 51 years ago, and I'm sure it can be state-of-the-art again without losing its character. So that's my plea for history. And community, it was a community effort then, and I hope that it maintains its tie to the community. And They were talking about, you know, the fact that so many people didn't know about tonight. I wouldn't have known about this had it not been for Gary asking for Cleo to be here. And I do hope that there will be more opportunities and more word out there to the community, because I know the community cares. It's just, they don't know what to do.
Thank you. And as far as the short notice and all that, I asked that same question when the board reached out to me. I do want to acknowledge they're sort of under a lot of pressure. So much had to happen, the RFP, the amount of time. So I think that it's great to have these, and more would be better, but I'm glad to see that they did try to get this one going so they could get some initial feedback. Comments before we go into breakout?
Let me just address the time again. There was a meeting at this city council for one of the committees, and pretty much the only people that showed up were the board members. And so several council members mentioned that we need to have another meeting so that we can hear what the community has to say. That is what this effort is. But we also realized that the RFP was coming out. My hope was that it would come out after this meeting, so if there was any more input, that input could come into the RFP. The RFP came out a couple of days ago. And so we're still hoping that, you know, the input and the information is gathered from here, because this is the community and this is our city, that we could do something. And I don't know what that is. But I just wanted to address the reason why, and that's why it was so fast. We tried to put it out to as many sources and things that we could think of, but again, we were under pressure to get this meeting held and get people out here and at least hear what other people have to say, and not just what we're thinking.
I would just like to make a suggestion, because I too only found out about this morning, and I really had to move heaven and earth to be here tonight, and I am adamant that this facility not be closed. So I have made that very clear at council meetings and at private meetings as well. So people in the community are, in fact, working behind the scenes. But because we do not have the kind of showing at this meeting that we've had at other meetings where there's a vital issue, I would like to suggest that in addition to these breakout sessions, you use the weekly packet that goes out to all the chairs of the neighborhood councils and then gets posted on Nextdoor, and make it clear that your website has been modified so that community can make comments and put their suggestions on your website, because it's hard to get these meetings together, but it's easy to go online and make a suggestion on a comment website. So that is what I would suggest, so that you get additional input.
And that's exactly what I was going to let you know, is that our board did say that we'd like to continue this conversation and fact gathering, information gathering online. So our webmaster will be doing that hopefully next week. No? That's fine.
I agree. No, just kidding. We're excited to have you here.
Just a question. What is your timeline? When they give the input, where is that going, and by what date are you needing to respond to?
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question. And just to let you know, we had less than 2 weeks to put together this meeting. That city council community meeting happened just less than 2 weeks ago. And in terms of timeline, the RFP came out, a day or two ago. It's due August 30th. There are 23, almost 22 days left to submit it. And so this feedback will be synthesized by our staff, and we're going to turn it over to leadership at the city. Ashley Golden's been working on this, Terrell Harrison, who's the head of Cultural and Community Services, and we will also be giving it to the committee that's been tasked with the RFP for City Council, which is a Community Services, right? Community Services Committee? Too many C's. Okay, so in terms of the timeline, it looks like August 15th, and this is all a matter of public notice. There will be a tour here at the PACC. That's next Thursday from 2 to 5 for potential operators. We have been touring some operators that are interested in this facility around, but this is a more public one. It's not mandatory, so our board will be here for that, and our staff to facilitate. August 21st is the last day for questions, so if there's any question about the RFP process, folks have to submit that digitally, and that gets answered to all the interested parties. August 30th is when the proposal is due. The city will be reviewing these proposals September 2nd through the 9th. Then September 10th through the 13th, they're going to do interviews with those that they would like if so needed. In October, they're going to do a selection and agreement development negotiations, that whole gambit. Come later on in October, there will be a city council committee meeting, and then in November, city council will approve whoever they choose to operate this facility. And the intent is that the operator will be good to go come January 2020. Does that answer your question? Well, maybe, hopefully, yeah.
Okay, it's breakout time. So please, let's give them a round of applause for all their work that they're doing up here. If you would please pick a table. It doesn't matter which table. There'll be a lead person at that table to help the conversation. And the value of these breakouts also is that somebody else at the table may stimulate you to come up with another idea. So it's very important that you participate. And afterwards, we'll collect those questionnaires. Thank you all very much.